Okay, as part of the business impact analysis CISSP supplement training, this is part two. Now, as we're dealing with the business impact analysis, there's some key aspects to consider with what an impact analysis actually is. And you're probably either listening to this or watching this video going, yawn. Yeah, it gets kind of boring. I know, I get it. But unfortunately, it is something that you need to consider if you're a cybersecurity professional or you are a business owner who's trying to basically protect your business. And if you are looking at working on the CISSP, as far as the training certification, this is a key aspect of the CISSP training. So there's some important aspects you need to understand. You need to define what is critical and what is non-critical functions that occur within your organization. And you need to consider what will disrupt the business unit in the event of an incident. And if that disruption occurs, how will that affect your overall company? This also may be they call it a considered critical path by regulatory laws or requirements that are out there. And basically this is from ffiec.gov. A critical path represents the business process or systems that must receive the highest priority during the recovery phase. So during the recovery phase of a disaster. So that's something you need to consider is if you do have to have a critical path with your business and there's some regulatory requirement around it, you need to have this in place based on what FFIEC is asking. And the FFIEC is, a U.S. government body that will regulate these things, but it doesn't matter which government you're working with, the United States, China, UK, whatever it might be. They each have a requirement around this, and it's very similar. So what will happen is you will create what they call a business impact questionnaire. And I'm going to have a copy of this on Reduce Cyber Risk as well. I'm still in the creation phase of that, but that'll be out and available here within the next couple weeks. That'll be available for you to go check it out at reducecyberrisk.com. But basically this questionnaire will help determine who's the responsible party and what should you do about it. Because as you're dealing, we talked about earlier with a business continuity plan in part one, you need to determine who the responsible parties are. And that will be the responsible parties for the specific system. So again, the BIA is on a specific system or application, and you may have multiple BIAs done to determine what your overall business continuity plan is. This is not a small endeavor. I'm sorry to say it is not just an easy button. Now you can start off that way with the fact that there's, let's just say, for sure that there's a specific system, like we mentioned before, an HR system, which is your key system for your business. You can start off with just that one and just cut your teeth on it. But in reality, there's probably many systems that will need to be available to operate your business. So this business impact questionnaire will help determine who's responsible and to develop uniform inventory questions or inventory of questions. So these questions are going to be your test bank or your question bank. And as we look at the CISSP certification, if you listen to this podcast or you're watching any of my videos, one of the things I focus on is how to teach people for the CISSP certification. Well, one of the aspects around this, you have a bunch of test questions that you have to go through. Same thing. You'll have a test bank of questions that you need to give to people to help you understand what is the overall risk so that it's not just you. You can pass on these questions. And the cool part is you potentially could automate this and build this into SharePoint Online and different ways that could make this a much more seamless process. But again, it must be tailored for the business needs, whether it's financial, manufacturing, chemical, retail, whatever it might be. It will need to be tailored specifically for your business needs. Now, here are some sample questions that I'm just going to kind of talk about here, and we'll kind of go into some background around them. But there's in the case of what you're going to put out for your questionnaire, this is just a very small subset of questions you may have. Again, though, I will couch this with know your organization. If you give them a questionnaire of about 150 questions, they're going to go, I ain't doing that. Ain't happening. Not going to work. So you need to keep it small and concise and to the point. But as you build that relationship as a cybersecurity professional or as a business owner, you build that relationship with the people in your organization, then you could probably add more to it. But again, that's just something to kind of consider as you're building your relationships in this space. So some sample questions for you to consider. Is there a requirement to keep business operational in the event of an outage? So you have an outage, which basically means a stray backhoe when it goes in and cuts the line and takes out your entire data center? Do you have a requirement to keep your business operational? Is there a physical requirement around that from a regulatory standpoint? If so, how long are the minimum and maximum amounts that are available? What does that look like? Another question is, who are the decision makers that can provide the necessary information to make this work? A lot of times people say, well, IT's got it. Well, it's not just IT has it. You have to have the right decision makers to help you through this process. So who are these people and that can provide you the necessary information you need? Is your business willing to pay for systems not being used? It basically comes down to, are they willing to have an insurance policy? Do you have an insurance policy in place? In most businesses in today's world have an insurance policy of some kind, right? Now, there are companies out there that can afford to not have an insurance policy, but in reality, because they're self-funded, but in reality, most people have insurance. Now, in this case here, you would decide, do you have to have an insurance policy for your company that would be to allow systems to be up and operational in the event that they're not even being used? So those are things you need to consider. If the business will do that, that's great. If not, then that will help understand what do you want to build out for a BCP. How would your department or function if the mainframe network or internet access was not available? So basically, if you lose connectivity, how will you operate? And those are key questions you need to ask yourself. Many people just don't. They just go, it's always going to be there. Well, until it isn't. Most companies, if they don't have a plan in place, they will not survive. And I can't remember what the statistic is, but it's basically if you don't have a good backup recovery solution in place, and that's just one aspect, most companies, I think the number was like 60% will fail within the first year because of this. So you need to have a plan around that. What are your critical outsourcing relationships and dependencies? So do you have relationships or dependencies with third parties that you have to have in place in the event of a disaster or in the event that you have to keep your business operational? Here's a big one that I think people don't think about a lot is what are the critical cash management and liquidity issues that you may have? Okay, so your business goes poop. It dies. It's gone, right? It gets smoked. But so then the question is, I got to buy new stuff. I got to get new computers, got to get new monitors, got to have my new applications ready to go. But nobody has the cash. Who's got the credit card? Don't know. I don't know. Does Bill have the credit card? I don't know. It's the CFO. Where's he at? Well, he's in the Bahamas enjoying being a CFO. I mean, you don't know, right? So you got to have those plans in place of who's going to pay for stuff if you got to turn it on. And there's many more questions that kind of come into this place, but you got to ask what are the key things that are going to affect your business. And then as you dig through these questions, more questions will arise, I guarantee you. But it's a great place to start. But again, start small. Don't get real big. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew in this space, because if every time I bite off more than I can chew, I look like a chipmunk, and then I end up having to probably spit my food back out. That's probably kind of gross, but it's the truth. So anyway, that's the impact questionnaire. Now we're going to get into RPO and RTO. So RPO is Recovery Point Objective. Now I alluded to this earlier as it relates to as you're doing your overall business continuity planning. So RPO is a Recovery Point Objective, and it's the max tolerable data loss for each activity. So how much data can you lose? So in the event of a tornado rolls into town, and I'm in Kansas, so we have tornadoes, not as much as we used to, but we have tornadoes. And these tornadoes roll into town, they take out the data center. As they take out the data center, the data was being updated, bang, 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 back and forth, back and forth. Everything's good, we're smoking hot, everything's happening, then all of a sudden your data center goes away. Now you want to bring it back up. There is the point of what data loss are you willing to accept? So say it takes 2 weeks to bring this thing back up. This is hypothetically. Are you willing to accept 2 weeks of data loss? Probably not. So are you willing to accept a 5 minutes of data loss? So that means from the time that it was last updated to when the tornado hit it. That might be acceptable. So you got to decide, is it weeks, days, hours, minutes, or nanoseconds? If it's like supposed to be instantaneous almost, then you got to have a different solution in place for that. And this is the data. This is the point at which the data is actually physically lost. That's the part that you have to consider is your recovery point. And what point do you want to recover from the time that it was operating? Recovery time objective. This is the max amount of time allowed to restore the functionality. This is weeks, days, hours, or never. And what that means is that how much time do you need to bring it back up and operational? So in my previous example of 2 weeks, maybe your business is okay with being down for 2 weeks while it's trying to get this system back up. That's probably not the case. It's probably less than a week you want to have your business down, because what ends up happening is when your business isn't there, customers will go on to somebody else. So I would suggest that you probably want your business up and operational within a day or two, at least the key aspects of that. And then the key aspects would be what your business impact analysis is going to figure out how much data are you willing to lose on these key aspects. Can the business run without systems up and operational? So can you just take orders with the old-fashioned paper method? When there was some ransomware that rolled into some hospitals, that's what they had to do. They had to basically do stuff with paper because all the systems were turned into bricks. Those are key pieces that you need to ask yourself. And then as an example I have is shop floor systems that cannot connect to the network. Well, if you have a shop floor system in a manufacturing space and it can't connect to the network, well, it's not producing whatever widget you want to produce. Is that good or is that bad? Can you do that? Can it operate without being connected to the network? Maybe. If it's really old, for sure. If it's newer, probably not. Is your manufacturing affected? So then this comes down to is how long can it be affected? 1 day, 2 days, a week? I don't know. Only you can make that decision as a security professional working with your business, because they're the one, and honestly, you can't make it. It's your business that'll help you, but you guys will make the decision as a group. One thing other to consider is using technology. Now, there's various technologies that can be available for you. The first bullet I talk about is disaster recovery, or DR might be built into it. Depending on the application, you may have a level of disaster recovery built into the application itself, versus like say for it's a SaaS solution, so software as a service. It's in the cloud. It's already is replicated in multiple zones. If it goes down, it's already there. It's already available. You don't have to mess with it. Are some of your applications cloud capable? So you may have an application that is really good, but it's old and it doesn't work well with the cloud because it's on newer systems. So you need to find out, well, okay, my business continuity plan is that I'm going to take this software, I'm going to upload it to the cloud, I'm going to operate out of Amazon AWS with this application. Well, is that application compatible with doing that? It might not be. Licensing-wise, is it compatible with doing that? Maybe not. So those are things you need to consider. Remote capabilities. So do you want to utilize like Citrix or Amazon Workspaces to allow you some level of giving your desktops in the cloud? So Amazon allows you to remote in. You have desktops that are operating in the cloud ready to go. You could have that all predefined, pre-configured, set up, ready for your organization with all the software needed and set up ready to go, and you just turn them off. And the moment that you need them, you turn them back on. But now that would take some training with your people to understand how do they log in, what do they do. You'd have to keep the software updated. But those things can be set up ahead of time depending upon your organization's need. Storage. If you're dealing with keeping your data, one thing you need to consider is we work through and you build out your impact analysis from your questionnaire, that data along with your business continuity plan and your DR plans need to be stored somewhere. Well, they could be stored in the cloud in these locations. You need to have that defined and already pre-configured. And so that way, and then trained that everybody knows this is where you need to go to get it. The associated documents, they also go along with your BCP and your BIA and your DR, and that's an acronym soup. All of those BPP, all of those documents need to be stored somewhere. And your call trees, making phone calls for people, any templates you have or any other documentation that you have can be stored in this location as well. However, now from a security point of view, all this stuff is wonderful, but you better protect it, because let's just say you're a bad guy and the bad guy now knows all these different things about your organization. You'll have labeled in here critical systems to your company that is now potentially telling somebody who's the bad guy what's going on. So you need to think about that as well. What are these systems and are you protecting them? And if it's on a SharePoint, like a SharePoint Online through Office 365, who has access? You don't want everybody to have access. You want to limit that to specific people. Also, other things to consider around technology. What are your mobile capabilities? Do you want it available on mobile phones? Do you want it available on tablets? You want to outsource the entire process or capability to a third party and just have somebody else worry about it and deal with this problem for you. So there's different things you can consider as you're dealing with technology and how to handle it. Now, completing your BIA, the product should be evaluated with a risk assessment. So once your BIA is done, okay, so you went through the questionnaire, you filled that thing out, which again, we'll have a reduced cyber risk. You'll have some stuff for you to look at from a template standpoint. Then what you should do is you should then do a risk assessment of that specific system. And what it does is it then prioritizes the potential business disruption. So you know this system is critical. It's critical. Can't lose it. Got it. It's super important. That's step one. Step two then would be to identify the severity and likelihood that something actually bad is going to happen to it. If this is an HR system that is triple redundant in multiple locations, it's updated to everybody and everything, and it's in the cloud, and it's super critical for my business. However, I've got all kinds of plans in place that it's ready to go. Okay, and will someone take it out? Nope, can't take it out because there's so many places. And plus, nobody's really interested in it. Or it's your secret sauce, and it's in one location, and nobody backs it up, and if it was compromised, that would be bad. So that would be a different scenario. All of those risk assessments need to be done of what is the overall risk to the company. If it's your secret sauce and everybody's after it and it's only one location and it's not backed up, that'd be high risk. What's the likelihood of somebody going after it? Well, potentially it's pretty high because if it's your secret sauce. But if it's some generic system that really nobody cares about, now people will poke at anything, right? I mean, hackers will do whatever they want to it just to do it. But in reality, if it's not really on their radar, if it doesn't have money, if it's not tied to some way they can monetize it, they're not really going to mess with it. I mean, what do they know? They don't know anything. But if if they can monetize it some way or reputationally schwack you, then they will do that. So you analyze the threats, whether your impact to your organization, your customers, or impact to your financial systems, products, and processes. These are various aspects you need to consider when you're dealing with completing your BIA. Again, that's where it rolls into the risk assessment. So BIA is step one. Step two is your risk assessment. And then from there, you'll move on to do different aspects around risk management. So that's completing the BIA. Last thing is you talk about reviewing this with your board or senior management. You need to get this done, and you need to periodically do this and update your senior management around these things. So they need to be involved with what's going on. Business operations, because it also is, as your operations will change, any audit requirements that may come up, or any lessons learned that you did during your testing, your small, medium, or large, those are, or complex, I should say, those things will need to be incorporated into your BIA. So all of those aspects, again, living, breathing document, need to be adjusted. We talked about from a technology standpoint, where do you store this? Recommend storing it off-site, having at least one copy off-site. Reason is because in the event of a disaster, you have the ability to go out and get it and start it off right away. So off-site storage is really a big part of this, especially as you're dealing with these critical systems. But again, come back to it, make sure it's secure and it is stored correctly. All right, here's some references that we came into from as it relates to the business impact analysis. That's ISCsquare.org and their training manual of 2018. FFIEC, Target Media's got some great stuff out there on disaster recovery, and then Wikipedia around business continuity planning as well. All right, hope you enjoyed this training. Again, check everything out at Reduce Cyber Risk. My name is Sean Gerber, and you can check me out there. Have a great day. See you on the flip side. See ya.